This is a tutorial guide on how to make a Strongarm slash Retaliator slash Stryfe slash Radar slash Rampage Nerf integration. As you can see, I've taken bits from all of the Nerf guns, put them together, but in particular I'm focusing on the Stryfe integration to the Retaliator barrel. As you can see, just grab your normal Nerf Strongarm, and here you can see there's a Stryfe with a Retaliator barrel, and what I aim to do is integrate the Strongarm into the Retaliator barrel and create like a seamless connection between the two. So firstly what I need to do is I need to cut down and modify the Strongarm so it sits flush with the Retaliator barrel. Well, the first step is to disassemble the Strongarm entirely, and you first remove the 3 screws that hold together the slide, the cocking mechanism there, and you just remove the 3 screws, taking care not to lose any of them. The back part of the slide is attached by a spring which is located inside the gun itself, so do not reef that off, just leave it on there for now, while I quickly pull out all the other screws, gently pry apart the 2 halves of the gun like so, also being careful not to lose any of the screws. There's that little the tactical rail attachment, little doodad, little doohickey with a tiny little spring, tiny little piece of plastic there. Don't lose that if you want to keep using the tactical rail, which you still want to do on this mod. There's the interior of the Strongarm, that back piece there, that's an important trigger mechanism. There's the rotating barrel, and there's the firing mechanism there and the trigger assembly, along with the slam fire connection arm. Disassemble the single screw there. It's different to other screws. It's got a big flat wide head on it. You can sort of see there it's quite larger than the others, so you can tell it apart. It's also quite a bit shorter. There's the trigger, we're going to modify that later, and there's the fire mechanism with the spring inside and the plunger and plunger tube, and there's the slam fire arm there. Okay, there's a little spring that holds the slide on. The spring just pops off. It's just hanging there on a plastic stalk. Just pop it off and take the slide off. As you can see, I just grab the Retaliator barrel, sort of line it up by eye where you'd sort of want it to hit, how you want it to sit. You want it to sit flat as possible, so it looks seamless. Next step is to grab a hacksaw and try and draw an imaginary line from the front part of the gun all the way along, being careful to move the saw above some of the screw points, some of the mounting points for the screws. There you can see I've chopped 1/2 of the handle off. I found that it sits good. Then I stick it back to its other half, and that gives me a guide to chop the other part off there. So you can see I use it as a guide. Quickly hacksaw through. I'm using just a metal hacksaw, one with really fine teeth, to make the cutting real easy. Obviously this footage is sped up, so it goes a bit quicker. Yeah, it was just a fine-tooth metal saw that cuts through metal, and it just pretty much cuts through the plastic. With the gun disassembled, the plastic is actually quite soft. This mod will require a lot of cutting, a lot of sanding, a lot of fine-tuning and adjustment with a Stanley knife or a box cutter knife, as it's referred to as. So I'm trying to line it up there, seeing if it sits flush. You'll need a bit of sandpaper and a block. I'm using 120 grit sandpaper here, and speedily sanding down any burrs, any lumps, trying to make it nice and smooth, as I said, so it'll sit nice and flat. It's a good idea to have a vise to hold it for you while you sand. And there, I sand it quickly, getting rid of any of the mess. I'm also using a file. It's a metal file, probably shouldn't be used on plastic, but it works really, really well, and it just burns through the plastic. Okay, See, now I'm lining it up again to check. Also, an important thing to note is that the slide mechanism doesn't bump up against the top of the Stryfe. If you later on mount that barrel back onto a Retaliator, it will bump. It will hit the front part of the Retaliator, so you'll need to modify your Retaliator if you want this mod to work on it. But for the Stryfe, there's plenty of room. I'm just marking it there with a texter, how much forward I want the Strongarm to sit. So that slide has got plenty of clearance there. As you can see, there's quite a bit of clearance. So I've marked it down. I'm using a set of vernier calipers to measure up the tactical rail, the width of the tactical rail, so I can start cutting in a slot into the bottom of the Strongarm so the tactical rail will slide in. I don't want the tactical rail to clear it totally. I want the slot to be smaller so it sits in, and so the gun will the Strongarm will hug onto it. As you can see, I'm just measuring it by eye just to see how big the slot shouldn't be bigger than, as you can see, 12 mils there. The slot shouldn't be bigger than that, otherwise the tactical rail will just fall off. I chose to cut this slot using a Stanley knife or a box cutter knife. The reason is because they're really sharp and the plastic is really soft. If I had a Dremel, I would have used a Dremel, so that might be a better option for those who have a Dremel drill or are a little bit handier with perhaps power tools, but I don't have any, so I'm just going to use a Stanley knife. It's really sharp. As you can see, I'm making incisions there. I've drawn how far I want my slot to be. I've worked out how wide I need it to be, and now I'm just slowly cutting there. This is in sped up motion again. This is in double time, and it may require a bit of sawing and a bit of pressure. Be careful that you don't shatter the blade and then it flicks off into your face. I've done it before, so yeah. Anyhow, there you go. Start cutting the slot. Again, I'm lining it up. I'm using half the Strongarm this time just to try and line it up. Trying to get it to sit as flat as possible. As you can see, I've left one screw hole, which will go through a hole I'm going to drill through the barrel of the bottom of the tactical rail on the Retaliator barrel. You can see it there on the white handle. See, I'm just trying to line it up there. Okay, so that half looks nice and smooth. Looks like it's sitting pretty flush. You can see that there. I've got it where I want it to sit. If there is a high spot, I just go over with the box cutter, the Stanley knife, and just trim off anything to try and get it as flat as I can. Sand it with a sanding block also keeps it nice and flat. If I had a power tool, I'd probably use that. Okay, there I am using the Stanley knife to just trim off any rubbish, and now I'm using a Stanley knife to trim off the bottom of the trigger guard there, because for this particular one I've worked out that it's not going to sit flush. That trigger guard is just in the way. It's not letting the gun sit flat and mount properly, so it's going to end up getting removed. There's the two pieces put back together. I'm now making sure it's nice and even over the whole Strongarm, taking off any burrs, any high spots. It just takes ages of going backwards and forwards, lining it up, seeing if it works. There's me measuring the inside of the tactical rail. So the slot that you cut into the bottom of the Strongarm has to be, there it is, 12 mils there, or I don't know what that is, 0.492 of an inch. I'm not sure if that's half an inch or what. And there's me measuring the slot up with the vernier calipers. As you can see, I think I'm close in the inches. I don't know about inches, but when I change the verniers to mils, I'm about 11 mils. So I need another mil of material taken off for the tactical rail to sit nicely, but then not fall off. If you have a look at your tactical rail, you see it's got a wide part, like mushrooms out, and you don't want it that part. You want the slot as big as the thin part, so that way you can slide it onto the tactical rail and it won't fall down. There's me measuring it up with the vernier calipers. Again, using the file to take off any high spots, make it nice and flat so it sits nice and evenly and the gun doesn't wobble sideways. because you want it to be as firm as you can on the barrel, so when you're running around and stuff, it doesn't wobble. Then measure it up again with the verniers. You don't need verniers, you can just use a ruler. Or you can just do it by eye. But the more precise you get, the more accurate it is, the better fit it is. Okay, now I'm modifying the trigger. Just taking a little bit of material off the bottom of it, so it doesn't sits into the strong arm properly and doesn't bump up against the bottom of the tactical rail of the Retaliator barrel. Again, I'm using the Stanley knife or the box cutting knife just to take a bit more of material on there, probably about 3 mil or something in inches. I don't know what that is. Okay, see, there's the trigger guard removed, so the trigger needs to not hit anything when it goes in. It's a bit more sanding. I want it to sit as flat as possible. The next thing I'm doing is a mod on the actual the rotating barrel part of the strong arm. What I'm doing is taking out the little stick things in there that stop you using the streamline dart. Once again, I'm using just the end of the box cut of the Stanley knife, applying a bit of pressure right on the hole where the holes are, and the thing just pops out like that. Now you can use streamfire darts. Be careful not to make the slot too big, otherwise when you push the darts through, they'll come all the way through, and that's bad. See, there's a streamline dart, in it goes. So that was a really simple mod that anyone can do. You don't even need to pull the gun apart to do that. Alright, putting it back together, the little spring goes on first, and the slide, then the plunger tube, and the plunger and spring assembly, then that little orange barrel bit at the front. International viewers will notice that this gun is slightly different from the ones that the US and the UK get. Its colours are slightly different, also the spring is slightly different as well. We get the less potent one in Australia. There's a back trigger mechanism. It's got a little spring that goes in it. It's really tough to put back in. Don't lose the little spring out of the back of it, because if you do, the gun will no longer work. Okay, then the trigger assembly goes in. I am going to put a little screw in the trigger assembly to keep the trigger constantly depressed. That means it'll constantly be in slam fire mode. See, there's the screw. It just goes into the back of the trigger and just keeps it pulled back and tight. That can be removed later if you want it to. If you want the trigger depressed, as you can see, the trigger is depressed and it's constantly in slam fire mode. Here is that back trigger assembly doodad. You put it in first, lift it up, there you can see the slot, then you got to slide the spring in top first, and then it sits in the bottom. And that is a pain in the neck. There's the gun assembled, all the screws put back on. It's mounted onto the rail, tactical rail, pretty well. As you can see, it's not shaking, it's not wobbling. I did end up putting one more screw in there, but it's completely detachable. You can detach it. There's that one screw there. You can detach it and throw the strong arm away if you want, and the Retaliator barrel is just normal. It's just got one hole drilled through it for extra stability. There it is. I've mounted it onto the Stryfe, and now we're just going to test fire. That magazine is from the new improved Rampage. The stock is from a Raider. And here we go, test fire. And slam fire. And that concludes the video.